Hey, special educators. Welcome to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire, the podcast dedicated to making your job as a special education teacher easier by making your instruction more fun for you and your students. Inside each episode, you'll learn how to get the most use out of your task boxes in the classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Hollady from Chalkboard Superhero, a veteran special education teacher passionate about empowering you with purposeful teaching strategies, helpful tips and tricks, and other classroom management tools that will help you thrive in your role. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey there, special educators, and welcome back to Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I'm your host, Lisa Hollady, and today we're going to be talking about something that happens on repeat for me, getting a new student in the middle of the year. If you're in special education, you know that students don't always arrive in the beginning of the year. They show up mid-year, sometimes with plenty of notice, but oftentimes with little to none. And we have to figure out how to support them in an already established classroom setting. So I don't really have my own classroom right now. I work with a push-in model supporting students in general education classrooms. So for me, the challenge isn't just setting up my own space, but also making sure the student, the gen ed teacher, and the classroom environment are all set up for the success. Now, most of the time, I just get a random email on a random Tuesday saying, oh, you're getting a new student tomorrow, which is oh so fun. But in the last 2 months, I've welcomed 4 new students to my classroom. So today, I am walking you through my approach for what I do before a student arrives, how I collaborate with the gen ed teachers, and how to make their transitions as smooth as possible. So the first thing I do before I do anything else is I start with the IEP. But here's the thing. IEPs are helpful, but they don't always tell the whole story. Sometimes goals are outdated, accommodations weren't consistently implemented in their last setting, or even present levels don't fully reflect what the student is doing today, right? So my goal is to use the IEP as kind of like a starting point, not the final say. Key things I look for are eligibility and services. So what supports are listed? Are they getting OT? Are they getting speech? Do they need any behavior intervention? Then I look at the present levels. Where are they academically and what behavioral needs do they have? Then I kind of look at accommodations and modifications. So what strategies have or haven't been working, right? And the last thing I kind of look at really quick is their goals. How can I embed these into gen ed setting? Or if you have your own classroom, if you are in a self-contained setting, how can you have those goals set up right away to get started? So once I have that information, I do create an IEP-at-a-Glance. So that's kind of a one-page summary with any key takeaways that I might have, really just sharing the most important information on this one page. I'll put a link in the show notes so that you can grab my free one that I have in my TPT store. But this is something that I like to share with anyone that's going to have hands on this student. So paraprofessionals, the gen ed teacher, any related service providers. So everyone is on the same page about how best to support this new student. And I knew that I kind of had to make this podcast episode today because I have a brand new student starting tomorrow. So it's so much fun. As I was in Disney World for our winter break last week and standing in line for the 7-door slide train, I get an email from our principal saying, hey, you're getting a new student starting on Tuesday. I'm like, oh no, what to do? So I made sure as soon as I got back that Sunday to sit down with that student's IEP and read over it with a fine-tooth comb. The second thing that I want you guys to do is connect with the family. A simple phone call before the student's first day can go a long, long way in building trust and setting a tone for that strong homeschool relationship, right? So I introduce myself. I ask the parent if they have any concerns. I give them a quick rundown of how that support's going to look like in the gen ed setting. This is also a great time to send home any, classroom policies, behavioral expectations, or information the gen ed teacher usually shares at the start of the year because this family wasn't there for that, right? Honestly, I did not have enough time to give this specific student a call or their family a call, but I plan on doing that tomorrow, and I know the student is going to be in. The next thing I want you to do is to collaborate with a Jenna teacher. So I'm pushing into an already functioning classroom, so collaboration is key. But what I like to do is meet with the Jenna teachers to kind of go over that student's IEP at a glance, kind of what accommodations and supports they're going to be needing. So things like, where should the student sit? What flexible seating is available? What kind of visuals is the student going to be using? Is there a visual schedule? Is there folders or anything that the student might need? So we might also discuss the setup of the room. Will there be a calm space for a student to have access to? Is the student going to need movement breaks or anything like that? I also like to plan for transitions or routines. So if there's any high stress times like unstructured activities, specials, or lunch, anything that the student might need extra support in, I try to make sure that the Jenna teacher is aware of this. It really is important to have that team effort approach because when the Jenna teachers feel supported, the student benefits from this. All right, so step 4 is help the student feel welcome. Even though I don't have my own classroom this year, I still want to make sure the student has a sense of belonging in their new space. However, in my specific school, I pull my students for one period at the end of the day. So for this specific student that I'm getting tomorrow, I get to pull her at the end of the day tomorrow for 10th period. So I get to have all of this stuff. But here's what I want you to work with your Jenna teacher. Ensure that their name is added to anything that other students have, like desks, cubbies, visuals, partner lists, classroom jobs. We have a visual on our lanyard with all our students' names, so I make sure to add them to all of this. I want to make sure to assign a classroom buddy, so I do have her sitting next to a peer tomorrow to kind of show her the ropes and what to do. This is not a peer that's going to have behavioral problems. This is, one of your best students I want you to kind of buddy up with. The next thing I want you to do is to provide a visual schedule or a social story. So if the student benefits from this type of structure, I may create a visual schedule about their new school day. I have 5th graders, so it's not really going to be the visual schedule that you're thinking of. This is going to be a typical schedule that a student would see. And it might have pictures on the side of it, very small, but it's basically going to say period 1, period 2. This is what we're doing. And I will have that for her throughout the whole entire school day so she knows where she's going. And then the last thing that I really want you to prepare for is their communication needs. Reading through the IEP, I want you to understand if the student needs an AAC device or some sort of communication device, you need to make sure that that's accessible on day 1. Even in an inclusion setting, these small steps can make a huge difference in helping the student feel like they truly belong. Think about how nervous the student is. And I know that I probably should feel jaded at this point because I've already had 4 new students in the last couple months. It's only February, guys, and I'm already getting a new student out. Granted, I've lost a student as well, but still, it kind of takes a toll. So number 5 is to teach and reinforce those expectations. So starting mid-year means the student really missed all of the beginning of the year classroom expectations. So instead of assuming they'll just kind of pick it up, I really try to review classroom routines. So rather than pulling the new student aside for separate instruction, I often use this as a chance to reteach expectations to the whole class. So if you have your own classroom, you can set aside time to kind of go over a list of all of this. However, it's really, really good that this person is starting right now because it's right after break. The student will be getting a kind of, refresh, restart because we've done all new seating arrangements in the class that I push into, and we're already going over a lot of expectations. Because let's be honest, everybody can benefit from a little mid-year reminder. So if needed, I'm going to still provide visual cues like first then charts or behavior reminders if she needs them. I'm going to explicitly teach any classroom routines that I think that she might need. or anything that's going to have a challenge to it, like transitions. So in 5 minutes, we're going to clean up and go to lunch. So pre-teaching these ahead of time before the transitions happen. The last thing I want to talk about is building rapport and finding reinforcers. So one of the biggest mistakes I used to make, jumping into academics too fast. Now, I know that building trust first is a priority. In the first few days, I really take time to observe, to connect, find out what motivates the student. Some ways I do this is to offer choice-based activities, to see kind of what they gravitate towards, giving positive reinforcement for anything that I see that they're doing well, conducting a preference assessment to see what they like. This really helps me to know how to keep them engaged and motivated as we really start working on their IEP goals. Now, for this specific student that I have coming in tomorrow, I already have seen and found a bunch of reinforcers that I like to use from the IEP that I read. So I will be using those specific ones right off the bat. So welcoming a new student mid-year can really feel overwhelming, especially I have 7 annual reviews on Friday, including my own son's on Friday, which is just one of those weeks where this is right after break. I have to finalize IEPs. I have to talk to parents on top of a new student. Yes, I am overwhelmed this week. However, I have to make sure that it's a smooth transition for the student. So I have to make sure that I, put relationships first with the student, their family, and their teachers so they feel supported from the start. So to recap, here's my go-to process. Read the IEP and create an IEP at a glance. Number 2, connect with the family early as possible as you can. Number 3, collaborate with those gen ed teachers, guys. Number 4, make sure the student feels included in their brand new space. Number 5, explicitly teach classroom routines and expectations. And finally, build rapport and figure out what motivates them. If you've been welcoming new students mid-year, I'd love to hear what strategies have worked for you. Maybe you didn't hear something that you use that I would love to see, or drop a comment on this episode post. So that's it today. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. If you found it helpful, take a second to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps me bringing you real-life special education strategies that you can use right away. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Teach, Taskbox, Inspire. I hope you've gained some tips and motivation to fuel your week ahead. If you're ready to explore more strategies for empowering your students as independent learners, be sure to dive into my free training at chalkboardsuperhero.com/training. And don't keep all this knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with your special education teacher friends who could use some motivation and inspiration. One more thing before you go. If you're finding this podcast helpful and want to show support, head to Apple Podcasts and leave your rating and review. Until next time, keep teaching, taskboxing, and inspiring.